Yeah, so it's a somatic practice that I've been building since 2017, I think. Because originally I read Bataya's work and I was really shocked by it. So I thought, oh, maybe I can do something because I came from a dance and movement background primarily. So I thought I could probably just explore the text with my body and the body mind integration. So I kind of just um there's no set procedure of the thing. I just whatever I read, I just kind of play with play it with my body, that kind of thing. And then I taught I taught the course for a few times in the US and Taiwan and also in Germany. And um it's pretty interesting to because every time I taught it, it's kind of different. It really depends on what kind of text that I was reading during the time that I was teaching. So I said originally it was kind of inspired by Bataya's work, but then um, it's just kind of went all over all over the place. I don't know. So there are a lot of things that happen in the workshop. Say I have some breath work and exploration around sensation, and then we would have some text writing exercise and some dual works and also some group works, all circle around the general topic of breath, sensation, and eroticism. So the work this time is called Old Sex. The performance work is called Old Sex. And I guess I was just firstly it was my thesis performance. So it started in 2018 and it was premiered in 19 when I was back in New York City. And then I came back to Taiwan. So I just kind of I was playing with it. So I turned it into a solo work, and that's the version that I'm presenting this time. Hope it's kind of clear. Um, Sorry, it's kind of hard to understand. No, it's because of the sound.
Okay, okay.
Can you do it again?
Uh, uh,
Just a
about
question.
oh, oh,
For all the critic people, when Feng's talking, could we all mute ourselves? Because I'm getting a lot of background noise from other people.
Great idea.
I was just asking about that tie about death in eroticism, but alt sex tying a type.
You mean how my work responds to his idea, the relationship between sex and death? Um, Let me think. Because I think his work is really interesting. How he ties the idea of sex as this my little death. I think that's how he called it. Because every time when people are having orgasm, it's like having a little death. And also how sex itself is like the validation of life itself. Um, so I think through the work, I'm trying to imagine sex earthly as um, a force of energy. Because I think in the beginning, it's because how everyone is having sex is very depending on how they're culturally structured, like their education, their family, their religion, then that kind of thing, and that. really shapes how they think sex can be. But I think originally and fundamentally, sex is just an energy. So I'm trying to imagine how that can be within a body. So that's why I put a body, or say alive, in this fabric, a cocoon-like thing. So I'm trying to imagine how we are kind of stuck in this, how this sexual energy is like stuck in us and how we play with it. And so that's pretty much the first, because the whole piece is actually much longer and much more complicated than the version that I'm showing. But the version that I'm showing this time is probably just the first of the 3 parts of the whole piece, of the whole old sex piece. But I think this part is about how I play with the breath, sensation, and this kind of inner sexual energy. And then for me, the interesting part is how this life gets out of the fabrics. Because then it kind of shapes itself into a human. But to me, it's kind of not totally a good thing, because I believe when sex is originally and fundamentally an energy, it's pure. And then when we are shaped into this human form, it kind of constrains itself, if that makes sense. So, but that's pretty much how things can be for human beings to explore sex. Sadly, but so I'm trying to imagine how that could be in the beginning. And then the piece kind of morphs into how we can explore sex as a human. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing you talk about as soon as this energy is put into a human form, suddenly you become constrained. That just, it kind of set my mind like alight, because while I was watching it, there's constantly this feeling of you're in the fabric and you're kind of able to be, there's no indication of who's inside the fabric. There's this kind of freedom in kind of being trapped in that cocoon, and then all of a sudden you come out of that cocoon and you're in your human form. Yeah, it was really interesting suddenly to think of that potentially not being escape, but that thing that seems on the surface like a form of escape suddenly being something that traps you. Um, yeah, when it came to uh, bringing this piece to Faki with the theme of escape, how do you, yeah, how did they kind of dissect the eroticism and the work with the body and the fabric? How do you think? Um, how did you connect that with the theme of escape? Because obviously we can kind of project our own ideas onto it, but what was your intention and your impulse and your ideas with the theme of escape?
I think visually, even if people doesn't really connect it with the, the theme sex, I think they can see something's trying to escape from this constraints. And I think contradictionally, it's just like I said, originally I think sex is this really pure energy, and then when it turns into human form, it is a kind of restrained, but also that's the necessary for most humans to explore it. So I think for people, mm, I don't know if I have an answer for it, because the process for my artistic creation, I rely on intuition a lot. So sometimes I just feel like, oh, it's like this. And and I just won't go deeper. Well, I don't know. Okay, let me think. I think because for this first part, when it gets out, it's I don't know if people can really tell the life, the condition of the life when it gets out of the cocoon. It's kind of in a shock because when it comes out of the fabrics, it's exposed to the world for the first time. So in the beginning, it's this really just inner thing. It's really an inner process. It's trying to grasp its place and its relationship with this world and also with its own body. So when it's exploring in the fabrics, it's also exploring its own body and then the body's relationship with the world, which could be seen as really confined. But that confinement sometimes is also very, what's the word? Pleasing. And then this escape, I think things can be seen from two different sides. So if you see it from the confinement side, you can say, oh, it finally gets out. So it has the ability to really explore the world. So that's a good thing. But then if you see from the other side, it's also defined in a way. So this escape also really defines it and set the path. So I don't know. That's my really not well thought. Can I just add one thing? Because it just came to me. Because I think when I was creating the work, I think sex is a very complicated thing. So this piece and also the sex itself could be seen from so many different perspectives. But one more to it is that when the life is trying to explore the world sexually, to me, I mean, in my life, there are so many times that I was exploring through sex as a medium. I felt like I was exploring with this layer in between me and the thing that I'm trying to explore. Say I'm exploring sex with the body, another body. I always feel like there's this thing between us that couldn't be really reached, compromised. I don't know the word. I just feel like there's always this really thin veil between every being when they are exploring each other through sex. And that's why I think it's connected to the theme escape. Because in the beginning, it's an energy that's kind of confined. And also, there's this veil between it and the world. But then it got out. It's a good thing. But just like I said, it's also, there are so many things happening at the same time.
Yeah, I wanted to use this silence for a moment to ask you. Well, first, I won't lie. I'm deeply interested in researching sex from all the different perspectives. So I'm amazed work and happy that we are talking. So I have like one maybe a bit banal question, but I'm deeply interested. So during your exploring of your sexuality, of making this piece, have you had any major discovery, something that you maybe, I don't know, didn't fully feel or understand before, or something that you understood differently, but then after this process or during it, that you finally, that somehow changed you? I don't know if it makes sense. My question.
I totally understand, but it's very hard question.
Sorry.
Yeah, let me think. I think it's hard to answer because, like I said, it's a longer piece. So, I think maybe I got something after I finished the longer piece because it's the piece kind of went into very, very different path after the first part. So when people are only seeing I think it's for me it's a beautiful thing when people are only seeing parts of the work because I see them, they can work on their own differently. But for the work, so like I said, it's a dual worked before, and in the dual work when I was working with my partners, um I think it kind of reinforced what I said before when we are exploring each other's body with this veil in between. Originally, I thought, oh, that's what I thought what sex is nowadays. When people are having sex, they don't really know what they're doing actually, because there's this veil in between. But then when I was actually exploring it with the body, it's no, I'm just thinking because it's gonna be a very long story. Because just a short story, just a short story. Because when I started Sex and Love, it's because I went to a contact improvisation class in New York City, and I had it before in Taiwan. But if you know, if any of you know anything about contact improv, it's a dance form. There's a lot of contact as its name. But people in the community, they're usually very, I wouldn't say very, but they don't talk about um, the desire and the arrows in the process. But because when we are touching each other, or when we're just touching ourselves, there's gonna be a lot of desire involved to me but people don't really talk about it because of its complicated history. And so the contact improv class that I had in New York City, that's very inspiring to me because that's the first time when I thought I experienced sex outside of the traditional sexual environment. So after the class, I thought, oh, I think I just had sex, and that's when I became very interested in how sex happens and when does it happen. So, and to connect it back to the piece, when I was exploring inside of the fabrics, I think it kind of creates a very unique and interesting sexual environment. When it's just with myself, even if it's just with myself, it's a very interesting sexual exploration and practice. So I think for the piece itself, it's this because I can't talk about the longer thing because people aren't going to see it. So, yeah, I think that's the thing that I can think of right now.
I'd actually love to hear a little bit about the longer piece because, yeah, you said that this is like the first third or so, and kind of it sort of ends just as there's that moment of transformation or escape or entrapment, depending on what lens you're arriving at. with the piece. And yeah, could you just elaborate a little bit more on what comes next, or a little bit about what the piece originally was and what decisions you made when you decided that you were going to do an online version for the festival, and kind of compare the two?
Um, no, it's such a long time ago. Yeah. The second part, there's a lot of pornography involved because I think the piece is about how human beings explore sex in the human world. So I think a lot of people, if not most people, explore sex firstly through pornography. So as a very wrong pedagogy. So I was interested in how okay, let me think. The process is I told my partner to bring in the porns that he likes to watch, and I also brought in some of my favorites. So and then I kind of added the clips together to see how our sexual fantasies, because I think I usually said that I think it's harder for people to talk about the porn they watch than the sex they have. Because I think the porn is, in a lot of conditions, more just dirtier. So yeah, and then I was just interested in how my and also his sexual practices are shaped around pornography, and how our practices can be in discussion through pornography. So I think the second part is there was this projection of both of our edited collection in the back side by side, and then we're just having, and then we kind of just took some of the movements and some of the interaction in both of our clips and just put them on to our bodies and just interact with each other. So I kind of just like getting cues and getting movements and getting inspiration from the pornography and interact with each other with those elements. Because I think that's how, for many times, that's how, for a lot of times, that's how people really interact with each other in their sexual practices through their fantasies and through their learning in pornography. But that to me usually fails because people are having sex in their minds instead of the bodies and the persons they are interacting with on spot. So that's why I think a lot of the sexual interactions fail. So that's the second part, how people fail in sex and pornography. And then the third part is this what's the word? Reconciliation. Reconciliation, just put away those pornography and really explore. And we were both naked, like fully naked with each other, and then just explore each other's body without all those expectations and constructions, and see how sex can really be. Because in the first part, we interacted with each other with this layer in between. In the third part, when we're really exploring without that veil, things can be very different. Because that's how I think it's my hope, wish to that someday I might have sex like that without this veil in between whoever's having that exploration with me. So that's yeah, that's pretty much what the whole piece is about.
Sorry, the question is how people can follow up my works. Is that the question?
Yeah, if you're, for example, planning a full exhibition of the entire in the future.
Oh, it's hard to answer that because usually I put all of my works on online platforms because I don't really keep them for myself. I feel like to me art should be accessible to everyone because I don't really hold any authorship to it. That's my ideology. But then you like before I put all of my works on YouTube, but then the channel just got deleted. Just like this month. So yeah, the whole piece was on the was on YouTube before, but it's too sensitive to most people, I think, because I really put a lot of porns on in the film, in the work. So yeah, I would try to reconstruct how I put my work, make them as accessible in the future, maybe on my website or on Vimeo or something. I'm still thinking, but if people are interested, they can definitely check out my website because all of my works are on it, and I'm gonna put the work on my website because there's no censorship there. So yeah, that's